The big news, Street Fighter 6 has eclipsed, dude, I feel like we were just talking about this the other day on its 5 and 4 million selling markers, but Street Fighter 6 has eclipsed 6 million units sold. And for all the doomers that are out there that feel like every game is actually bad and not doing good, and man, Street Fighter 6 has had plenty of that. A lot of, actually this game sucks. A lot of like, actually it was never good, you know, all that kind of stuff. Street Fighter 6 is now the fastest selling Street Fighter game ever since Street Fighter 2 in the early 90s. It is outperforming Street Fighter 4 by a lot now. And that's because the legs of Street Fighter 6 are really good, and legs is an industry term. How good does it continually sell as time moves on? Does it appeal to an audience? Does it still have the ability to get that audience of some kind and sell more copies? So yeah, the game has legs. This is legs. It was here the whole time. So there's a few things that we got to talk about. Number one is just overall, congratulations to the team for the success. They've made a genuinely very fun game that isn't completely, you know, removed of issues. We've had plenty of issues with Street Fighter 6 that we've had to call them out on several times as the game has progressed and moved on. But for the most part, the game and the sum of its parts are like exemplary. Like this is the new absolute exemplary fighting game experience of modern day fighting games. And that was established like literally over 2 years ago, almost 2.5 years ago now. So that's crazy, dude. They sell enough Gooner bait? Dude, they don't sell enough of it. Those costumes, the crazy Gooner bait costumes that they put out, they only put out for like 4 characters. And there are several more characters that they 100% could have done if they were just leaning in that direction. It also took like 2 years to even get those costumes. Like that's the crazy part of the relationship with the audience. And Street Fighter 6 is a games as a service game, which it technically is. It's an ongoing, continually updating game over time. And there's a disparity here. The disparity is that, dude, people want to buy shit and Capcom ain't making that shit, right? It's a very crazy relationship, and we've talked about this several times before. I'm just very happy to see like the game's doing good, that modern day Capcom has effectively found their way. And we gotta thank Matsumoto-san, Nakayama-san for all of their tremendous efforts and the dev team for actually like making the game reach these numbers. I think what's even crazier is that at this period of time, seeing how many millions of units this game has sold, I still keep reading that there is a amount of folks that are like, oh my God, it only sold as much as Mortal Kombat 1 sold. Jeez, man. Hopefully Street Fighter will eventually get there, you know? And it's like, yeah, you're not technically wrong. I think these games came out in a similar time frame. And yeah, for sure, Mortal Kombat has always eclipsed the sales of literally every fighting game. One day, Street Fighter 6 will get similar to Mortal Kombat 1 sales. But there's a lot to consider there that is relative and comparative. Number one, number one thing for you to realize is that outside of specifically Smash Brothers and Mortal Kombat, the fighting game space is significantly smaller than you think it is. And what is considered a success in the fighting game space is significantly less units than you have any impression of. Just as a comparison, let's talk about how successful Street Fighter 6 is as a game and what it's doing metric-wise for Capcom. There was another little game that came out around 2021 with perfect timing. Came out at the absolute best moment it possibly could with good netcode and found a brand new audience, and that was Guilty Gear Strive. Comparatively speaking, all the previous Guilty Gear games would sell in the hundreds of thousands range, right? I was working a lot with the Arxis USA. I think at the time it was Axis Games, like who the heck published it? And they were really trying to get Guilty Gear XR to like find its audience, right? And we were doing whatever we could to like show that stuff off. I was going to their offices, capturing gameplay, doing cool video stuff before the game was even out, because it looked just so amazing in my opinion and people weren't talking about it. So I found out later that like for the vanilla version of Guilty Gear XR, anybody want to take a guess on how much it sold? Different versions would come later on that would actually boost its sales and success, but like the initial version of the game, like 250,000, like 500,000, like relatively low numbers, right? 75,000, that's really low. 150K, 300K, like good, that's good. Game sold like 90K. And that wasn't particularly great for them, but it was in that specific spot. It would go on to sell more because version updates and, you know, Revelator and all that kind of stuff. Relatively speaking, like those numbers weren't exactly what they wanted to hit, but it wasn't bad enough for them to stop development. Even with that little amount of sales, they were able to continue. Dude, even games like KOF 14, as bad as it was, ended up pushing somewhere around like 300,000 to 500,000, I think. I can't remember what the exact figures were because it's been a long time. But even KOF 14 and those numbers selling 500,000 was completely able to establish SNK as a brand new fighting game developer and continue making fighting games to this day, you know? To eventually get bought out by, you know, some of the biggest people to buy them out ever. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of folks' impression of what is successful in the fighting game space is compared directly to some of the biggest games out there. And I would like to also share something that is like pretty wild and pretty crazy. A little Dragon Ball game came out not that long ago called Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, right? And it did very well, but ultimately kind of dropped off very hard because the game was kind of designed to be consumed within a few weeks, a month, a one playthrough, and not really played that much more. Here's what's wild. That game ended up selling close to the total units sold of Dragon Ball FighterZ after like 5 years. I think it was the first month. Sold pretty much as Dragon Ball FighterZ, the resident, practically best Dragon Ball game ever made by many considerations, was kind of eclipsing its sales. If it was really well received and it continued, then yeah, it would have absolutely had beaten. It doesn't look like that's going to happen right now. But even games like Dragon Ball FighterZ, as big as it was, as massive as it was, pushed somewhere close to like 9 to 10 million units in its entire lifetime, including sales and everything like that. So, comparatively speaking, fighting games got to try really hard, even in the ones that are as massively successful. What is effectively 5 to 6 million to like a NetherRealm or a Warner Brothers is significantly under the budget that they were looking for. And I would absolutely argue that the expectations internally for something like Street Fighter 6 was lower. It's just lower. Most likely because the budget allocated, the amount of money that Street Fighter got as like a product with its marketing and all that kind of stuff, doesn't come anywhere close to a giant WB game like a Mortal Kombat that has nearly as much as it has, you know? It's also very telling in our fighting game space where I see a lot of even prominent fighting game community members wondering why things aren't as big as they could be, you know? I also see similar sentiment where folks are like, dude, Street Fighter should be bigger. Our numbers should be bigger. There should be more. There should either be more people playing or more people buying the game or more people watching esports or that kind of stuff, right? We should just have more numbers in general with the intention that Street Fighter 6's numbers do not feel necessarily super high. I'm here to tell you they are. The numbers are ridiculously high. In comparison to the things that I have been actively following and evaluating for the past 10 plus years, ever since Street Fighter 4, right? Where it's been it's been my job to see how these games are doing, how people are responding, like all that kind of stuff. Street Fighter 6 is doing insane. The amount of numbers that they post on a daily, the amount of people that seem to be playing the game that are not just specifically playing it for like online ranked, which is a probably large amount of a lot of folks, but they actually have a fighting game that people want to continue to play, that they just want to engage with in some way that isn't just queuing into a ranked grind, you know? There's a lot of things that you can do in it, which is a big deal, man. No, 6 million units isn't the most for a Street Fighter game ever. No, that's going to go back to Street Fighter 2 Arcade and Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo for an individual version, right? And we would be about the second version into the game right now. Maybe about through the second version. So all I'm saying is that everyone's expectations from most folks that don't necessarily have the perspective of what makes a successful fighting game and what constitutes a successful fighting game, all have these ideas that like we could be bigger, things could be bigger, we should have more. And for someone with this like perspective from the fighting game community, y'all are doing so good right now. Bro, y'all are doing so ridiculously good right now. Just chill, you know? The game is likely the healthiest fighting game we've seen in a very long time. Like, I'd say since Dragon Ball FighterZ and Mortal Kombat 11. Since, no kidding, pre-pandemic, I think Street Fighter 6 is the most successful player base and everything, like, fighting game that has launched in the past 5 years. Like, actual 5 years. And then there's wild success stories, like, somebody just argued, was Tekken 3 the best-selling fighting game of all time that was, like, not a Smash or Mortal Kombat? And yeah, it was, until Tekken 7 beat it. Tekken 7 ended up selling more than Tekken 3 in the end. is a true massive success story. People sort of don't understand how big Tekken 7 was, which is why, you know, some of the stuff that's going on with Tekken 8 right now, that game's gonna have to go through some changes still. They're still going through changes, you know what I mean? All I gotta say is that I don't have the time personally to invest every waking moment into any one single fighting game. I'm a grazer, bro. I have to graze like everything and be good at everything without actually playing it. And at least Street Fighter 6 is a game that, yeah, I can see its issues at high level 100%, but the crazy part about it with the success that it's had is that the game holistically has not really changed that much since it came out. For 2.5 years, Street Fighter 6 is still the game it kind of was when we were first playing those betas back in like 2022. Like, let's be real, like we played a lot of that beta and I've put like 500 to 600 hours and you many more into these games, right? And bro, even in comparison to the beta, things have had minor adjustments on some characters and stuff, but really like it is the same game and it has managed to sell and perform as good as it has from like a competitive environment, from the sake of it having viewership and all that kind of stuff. It hasn't even gone through its big shakeup yet, right? Is that going to happen? I think it will. And I thought it was going to happen in this latest season. It didn't. So I wouldn't be surprised if it possibly does in the next. But yeah, would you have wanted more changes? Sure. I like shakeups, man, just in general. I think from me personally, like, it's doing just fine. So it's not like they need to shake things up a little bit. Just having something like a refresh to interfaces and menus, which is the entire point of what we did on MVCIB, made it feel completely new because everything looked a little bit different, right? Even fresh things like that will do a lot. Not to mention like mechanical shakeups, right? We're not adding a V-shift or anything like that anytime soon. That has not happened. But there absolutely should be some sort of consideration made of like, okay, so is this the time to do it? Is this not the time to do it? What do you mean by shakeups? So your core fundamental understanding of the game will be challenged. It'll still mostly play like 90% the same game, but for some people, they could come back and play Street Fighter 6 with a update that changes mechanical differences, like a mechanical update that adds something or changes something, maybe makes the game a little bit less crazy guess heavy on Oki and stuff like that. Sure, that could happen. Maybe throws aren't as powerful in some way. Yeah, that would change stuff a lot. That could be a thing that would shake the game up, that would sort of reevaluate of, okay, so what do I need to do here, you know? And some fighting games go through that like once or twice a year, man. Street Fighter 6, I think, has gone the most unchanged of like most fighting games I've seen in a very long time. And now the question is, should it? Considering what happened to Tekken 8 recently, which has arguably the worst shakeup in its Season 2 update. But there was a lot of underlying reasons behind that. There was a whole bunch of reasons, and that was not a common occurrence. I don't think that would happen to SF6. I really don't. That being said, I'm anticipating that at the end of this season, stuff like that could happen. It could, outside of getting more characters and all that kind of stuff. But it's clear that it doesn't necessarily need it, you know? And to be real, like even if Street Fighter 6 went on and kept things mostly tight, and they just work on character changes, and all that kind of stuff, yeah, I think they would still be doing just fine, you know? Here's what's wild. Just gonna throw this out. Every couple of quarters, Street Fighter 6 manages to sell like 500,000 extra units, which is insane for a fighting game, especially an old one. They did that in a current season that is not necessarily hoisting the most popular characters. Some are for sure. C Viper's still a niche Street Fighter character. Sagat's a legacy character, absolutely. Even with that, there's no wild guest character or some insane Terry or Mai or something like that happened before. It's a pretty like return to form. Here's a Street Fighter 3 character, Street Fighter 4 characters, Street Fighter 5 character, like that kind of stuff, right? Actually, not a Street Fighter 5. Ingrid will be coming back. Ingrid's gonna sell a lot. I'm sure she will, dude. I'm sure you're gonna see as soon as Ingrid comes out, this is gonna go from 6 million to 18 million. Extremely popular Ingrid is gonna do it. It's gonna do it, trust me. Either way, it's not like the season that really grabs you, like that will pull in an audience outside of the usual Street Fighter verse. It won't, but it's still doing just fine. And that's pretty crazy, man. I'm excited for what the hell happens in the future of Street Fighter 6, and I'm excited to see if it changes. I think any of that stuff happens, I'll be excited to come back and check things out. But at this point, I really want to see what the hell Alex plays like, bro. Like, Alex is a mad cool character that has always played a little weird, you know? So what are they going to do to make Alex sort of like either approachable or fully kitted? He's literally neither had either one, you know? Yeah, Street Fighter getting a new hybrid grappler could be very fun to watch. Did I see the new Street Fighter and McDonald's ads? I would never watch the Street Fighter McDonald's ads.
There's a Ken Burger?
If Street Fighter or McDonald's possibly teamed up and made like commercials and advertisements, I would number one, never watch them. And number two, I would just immediately stop streaming forever if that ever existed.
My ass bleeds American cheese.
The good thing is that we have never made a YouTube video about it.
She's gonna cocaine this right into my face. What's wrong with this country?
And I've never talked about it audibly on stream before, or the VTubers that are involved.
Is that like an umami sauce? He looks so happy. Ah!
It's a good thing.